So many people ask, why do I do what I do? And that's probably one of the greatest questions that does not have an answer in mental health. Again, and I used to say that. I spent a lot of money. I was spending basically $130 for 50 minutes in 1979, 80, 81, 82, 83 with some of the top psychologists, psychiatrists in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. My big question with my psychiatrist was, why do I pick beautiful women in my life and I destroy them? I verbally abuse them, I put them down. Why do I do this to women like that? What is my penchant? What is wrong with me? And the answer was, well, what do you think was wrong with you? And I'll never forget, I heard this for months. What do you think? And sometimes I would, if he didn't have another client, I would take 2.5 sessions and it was cash on the barrelhead. I mean, I walked out and wrote a check. And I just did that because I didn't want to get in debt with a counselor. And I would walk out and write a check for $350 because I'd taken 2.5, 3 hours. And I would go out and walk around his Mercedes, and he had a Lincoln Town Car, and if he drove that, I knew I owned them both. I was paying for enough that it was paying his payments back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I resented that. I resented the fact that I would ask the question, and well, how do you feel about that? What do you think? How do you think you need to stop? Why do I do this? Why do you think you do it? If I knew, I wouldn't be buying your cars for you. I would go to counselors, Christian counselors and pastors, and they would say, well, you need to read the Bible more and pray more. Well, I was so whacked out, I couldn't sit down and read the Bible because at 4 or 5 minutes and I'd get bored because it wasn't adapting to what I needed, but I didn't know what I needed. And so we get these pat answers within the faith world, and we don't even have the attention span to even sit down and do Bible study, that kind of stuff. So the only thing that got a hold of me was that 6 years that I was away from Judy, and I got into, in fact, I got into the belief system that I was preordained or foreordained, or God's foreknowledge knew that I would never make it to heaven, so why try? That I was going to be lost and I'd bust hell wide open, so if I'm going to go to hell, I might as well enjoy the trip. And so I got into pornography, drugs, alcohol, serial adultery, anything you get into. The only thing I didn't do was molest little children because I'd been molested as a child, and I didn't want a child to ever have to deal with what I was dealing with. And I didn't even know what I was dealing with. I just put that together. And so I got into everything thinking that when I die, I'll be gone for a long time, so party hardy till you go. And the thing that got a hold of me was I was in a living relationship with a woman. And this is the one that I kept saying to my psychiatrist, why do I pick somebody like this and then try to destroy them? And he couldn't even tell me that. He couldn't tell me that I was afraid of abandonment. And so I was trying to cut her down so that she would feel like nobody else would ever want her. As pretty as she was, nobody would ever want her. And she was good for one thing, she was lucky to have me. And I would tell her that. And she would defy me. She was a scrapper. And so one night we got into it and I almost killed her. And and the way she did it, she called the cops and found out that I could be up on a attempted murder charge. And they traced the line. Back in those days, they didn't have caller ID, but they traced back to the shelter. And law enforcement actually went out to the shelter and tried to find who made the call, and she denied it. And she called me and she says that the cops have been here. They know the call came from the shelter here. And I denied it because I wanted to give you one chance to get well. We're done. It'll never be again with us. But she says, there's something about you that I'm going to give you one chance. But if you blow it again, you're going to pay the price. Because if you don't go to therapy, and she actually recommended and told me where I had to go, who I had to see, who I had to sign up with. I had to meet her at a restaurant and show her that I'd done my intake and I'd signed up for this. Or she says, I will call the police and I'll give them your phone number, I'll give them your address, they'll come pick you up and I'll charge you with attempted murder. So I didn't get into the system because I did everything she said to do, because I was scared to death to go to prison. And it took that big of a whipping to get me to change. And I started looking at myself. And what's interesting is I had no memory of my sexual abuse in childhood. By this time in my late 30s, early 40s, my memories had capped off and repressed, so I had no memory of sexual abuse. But the reason I wouldn't go to prison is I had this tremendous fear of what I'd heard about the sexual stories in prison. And I made up my mind I was not going to go to prison and be some guy's pretty little boy or whatever the case may be. And so if I had to go to prison, I figured I wouldn't live the night through. I'd kill myself some way. So that all tied up, I hit my crisis and had no answers. And so that's what made me realize I got to deal with me. This is my issue. It's not any of the women in my life. It's my issue. And so that's where I got my start. I hit the wall and had no choice. It was either prison for 15 to 22 years or figure something out. You know, to end this segment, the biggest thing we have to understand is if I can become teachable, it's all fixable. Again, for lack of knowledge, my people perish. And I keep saying that because that's so important. Because if I don't have the knowledge, I don't know where to go. If I have the knowledge, the brain will actually work with me because it knows the truth from a lie. See, and so become teachable, and it's fixable.